Hello and welcome into the Sorare Data Show. I'm Andrew Lairdinho. You can find me as Lairdinho on Sorare. Joined today by PSU fans 2 today to talk about expected value. That's what we're talking about. And Mike Basson, you are correct. We are late. I'm late. It was my fault. We were talking about exciting things like Copa America. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, wait, we got a show to do. So thanks everyone for coming in. Sorare Juju back on the podium. Let's go Philly Dilly. We'll do it live. And whoever this is, the name is not showing on YouTube, so you're not getting any credit. But it says, I'm thinking of saving for the 45,000 coin Academy boost versus the half off player boosts. What do you think? Sean, you didn't buy any boosts today, did you?
Literally don't even know what he's talking about.
Great. All right, moving on. John Galt, thank you everyone for coming. John Galt says in season, meaning I'm guessing the in-season competitions will barely make for in-season rewards, meaning all other cards will drop massively. I'm guessing that means how much they make on in-season will not pay for the in-season rewards, or is it you won't be able to make enough? You buy cards to make enough for, I don't know. We'll get into that.
Again, I don't know what he's talking about either. So.
Yeah, I mean,
good start to the show.
Often translation, yep. But we'll see. Kev Hurd, what's up? Tom Brinson, Vita, what is up? Sigbog, hey guys, Sopsy, the value is to spend more. No, it's not quite what we're getting. And this no name, actually, I don't even know if it's the same no name, said, I wonder if Rainmaker's NFL will be good next year. This year, meaning season 2, was actually pretty good playing with season 1 cards, win season 2 cards, then win money with the new cards. That's basically the model. Yeah. Said funny Sorare took their model. Rainmakers seemed like a total mess for a while. It's funny because that's a model that Maxime and I talked about 6 months ago, and everyone told us we were crazy. Sora Holland, what's up? Brad Craig, Ryan Wilkinson. Carol said, it would have been a great game week, but all my goalkeepers forgot about their jobs. Yeah.
No, but know that one.
Yeah, Sean is struggling with that one right now. Shout out to Fernando Muslera. Looking for food. Let's see. Brad Craig said, congrats to the Matterberg stacks, keeping me off the podium in second division limited. Quite a game for them. I did see someone post something. I think they had like 300s or something like that.
Nice.
Cosmo is on the positivity train. Expected value equals 0. Hello, Kai. Ooh, what is this? Kokukeru. Evening. Shaforko. How's everyone here? Big Monday night in Copenhagen. Let's go. Nils. I'm still going. ZM Star. It's Hershey. Made it to a live stream. Welcome. Rich. Thanks for coming. Sean, expected value. I feel like the topic of expected value is one that a lot of people try to discuss, and it's very clear that as soon as they start talking about it, they have no idea what they're talking about. And I consider you to be an absolute expert when it comes to expected value. And I was like, this is the show we should talk about, because once a term gets out there and people are like, oh, I know what I'm talking about, and then they don't. And then people see that or listen to that or read that, and they think they learned what expected value is and how they should evaluate it for their own gallery. And it's just like the blind leading the blind. And as you just cleaned out your glasses, perfect timing. Can you please explain expected value to us?
Yeah, so for your lineups, the expected value is the value that you can expect to return from that lineup. So in the event of one weekend, you would say the expected value of my lineup is this. Over the course of the year, you can basically multiply that by how many weekends you'd expect to be able to run that lineup and be like, this is my expected lineup or expected value of being able to run this lineup over the course of the year. Obviously, it's not going to be perfect in terms of doing it in a super simplistic way, but it gives you some great ideas of how much cards should cost, how much you can realistically spend, and hope to get that value out of things within a year. Because the way that Sorare has transformed with this new update, I think things are very heavily predicated on you want to realistically try to generate within 1 year, or at least have an idea of what you need to generate within 1 year to justify purchases and ideas that you have, because otherwise you're just likely going to lose value and money on whatever you want to do. So I think with the way things are broken down currently, they have made it even more apparent what an expected value is within a lineup and how much a lineup is worth on a given weekend. And we will talk a bit about that as well, I think.
Yeah, I think it's really important what you mentioned, that the new way of playing in-season competitions is very different than the classic what we play now, because it gives you a very specific time frame where you have to effectively like outperform the cost of the cards to you. And Vita makes this point, it's really about 9 months because it's not the calendar year that these leagues play. But previously, it wasn't that easy to figure out any sort of expected value because the time frame was effectively like infinite, that you have these cards forever. And I guess it's not so much infinite as the duration of a player's career, which in itself is really absurd. And now this move to the in-season comps that require 3 or 4 new season cards allows us to say, okay, how much am I expected to win in the first game week, which is basically the same as the second game and every game week we have. And at the end of that, will I be able to be positive or not?
Correct. So first question I have for you is in regards to the new mechanism and the new in-season format. I have come to find it kind of broken in the fact that it literally does the exact opposite what I think its intentions are supposed to be. And it doesn't seem like it's just myself either. It seems like a lot of people are in this mindset. There are cards that I want for this upcoming game week that I am not buying and making my life worse intentionally because they are not in season cards. Therefore, buying them feels really stupid for two reasons. One, they're not in season. And two, I don't know what the classic competition prize pools look like. So I can't go buy classic competition cards without knowing those answers. So do you think that it's a little bit broken with how the mechanic is currently due to the amount of in-season cards you need for a competition? And my example is sort of like, so in the super rare division, I think it's a little bit more okay to buy an old season card because you can have 2 super rares in season from classic cards going forward. Whereas like the rare and limited is like you have to have 4. So it makes it a lot more tricky where like I'm not just going to buy a goalkeeper to use in that lineup because I want to use my goalkeepers as new season cards each year. So like what's your thoughts on how the mechanism is currently working?
I think they got stuck between a rock and a hard place, and this is the result. That had they announced absurdly humongous changes to the platform and told us that they were effective right away, people would have been furious that they had no time to adjust. And then they gave us the time to adjust, and people are furious because they're actually not furious at all. But they're in your situation of it feels dumb to buy cards now because we really don't know what's coming. And or the fact that we know what's coming, it's actually detrimental to buy the cards that you think you want to buy now. Like if we knew, well, it doesn't even matter what we know. We know that new season cards will be required for these in-season cash prizes soon. If you're looking at, MLS, J League, K League, like those. And so buying like old cards of those types of players feels dumb because you're not going to be able to use them everywhere that you would be able to use a new season card if they were out. But I think it's just temporary. Like, I think it's one of those like temporary things that kind of sucks right now. But we know that like once there's clarity and once these things are up and running, like I don't think you'd have the same difficulties making that decision. Like if there was a
Correct.
new season, like if it's February 26, 2025, like would you buy the cards that you were thinking of buying now?
If it was last year, I would buy the cards that would have already been in my gallery. So it's just, and part of the issue is, so the rock and hard place thing, I agree with it to one extent, and then the other extent I don't. A lot of the reason I'm not buying is because I don't know what the classic competition prize pools are going to be. So like that's something they could have had that answer and explained what it's going to be. So then I have the information to whether or not I want to buy them. So anyways, moving on.
Sorry, but to like stay on that, what would they have to announce for classic competitions that would make you buy the cards now?
I just need to know the classic competitions are not going to be horrendous. I think would be the answer I have.
So what makes them like the expectation is that we're going to win cards from the classic competition, right?
Correct.
And whatever the mystery boxes give us. So is it really just down to how many, like the number of cards that are given away in totality does not matter to you? Like you
No, it
care about how
does.
many stars and tier ones are giving away.
I mean, I need to know what I can realistically hope to win, right? I need to know if I can get like, if I'm looking at it and it's like, all right, you can realistically hope to win like a tier 5 rare every 3 weeks. All right, then I'm gonna feel like, well, that's not very worthwhile to me. I'm not super interested in that. If I can realistically win a loot box that has a 20% chance at a tier 0 rare, and I can win that once every 2 weeks. Okay, that's more interesting to me. Basically, what I need to know is I need to see like what can my expectations be in terms of like a weekly output for cards, or because like obviously like you're not winning cash, you're winning different cards, you're getting an idea of what you're doing. Charlie said you get a very good idea of what there are from the blog. Disagree entirely. You get a very reasonable idea of what the Premier League is giving out, or Champ Europe. You don't get what they're giving out in America. You don't know what they're giving out in America over the course of the summer when the MLS plays. Like, is it going to be a different prize pool in the summer compared to what it's going to be in September when everything else is there? Because if it's like the same uh in May or in June as it is when it's like everyone's playing, well, then I have more interest in MLS guys. If there is like, okay, during MLS season, you get like 0 cards and you just get nothing. All right, well, then I don't really want to buy MLS cards during that time because I can just utilize cards from the Dutch league or the Belgian league for Challenger, for example. So I really disagree with that. You do not have the info you have or that you need. If you think you do, then I just think you're mistaken and you are not looking at things properly, most likely.
So I think
you can have a guess, right? Like I could have a guess of what it's going to be, but I don't know what the loot boxes are going to look like because we haven't seen the loot box example. Like even with the champion Europe, where we have like an idea of like they're giving out loot boxes and like what they're doing with loot boxes, we have no idea what the power is going to be in the loot boxes. We have no idea if you're going to have like a 0.0001% chance of getting a tier 0 rare, or if you have like a 1% chance of getting a tier 0 rare. We just don't know yet. So there's just, I think right now we have like 20% of the information that you need to make a decision. And you can make assumptions into what logically makes sense, but that doesn't mean that's actually what's going to happen.
But I think realistically, we know that if you win, you're going to get a star. And then you get a reward box on top of that. And I feel like this.
But you're not realistically going to win, right? Like that's not like a realistic expectation.
Absolutely. And yeah, so I guess the discussion is basically we need to know like how many people reasonably can win a tier 1.
Correct. And Charlie said, but surely it'll be based on a similar percentage decrease of what it is now from Europe to MLS. There's no discussion of it there being a different prize pool on a week-to-week basis. As of what we know, it could be the exact same prize pool week to week the entire year and nothing changes, right? Like it could mean, which in that situation, like MLS cards might have more value than the Dutch cards or vice versa. So I think that there's a situation where there's just a lot of information. Yeah, and Star Sorare says that if you make an assumption and it makes sense, they're probably going to do the opposite. It happens frequently where like you can come up with an assumption and you can make like a logical breakdown of a thing, and it's the complete opposite of like what you would logically come to. Like we talked about last time, like I did not expect U23 to just get bulldozed in this update. I'm not going to go into like that again because we've talked about that enough, but like I didn't expect that. To me, it got bulldozed, and that was something I was completely unexpected. If you told me that like a week before the update happened, I would have been like, no, that's not happening.
You're crazy,
yeah, you're nuts. So I think it's one of those things. Like I need a realistic expectation, a realistic guide of what I can expect, and I don't feel like I have that yet for non-champion Europe related contests.
Jonathan said, we don't know if you win in D5, you win a star. We actually do know that if you win in Division 5, you probably don't win a star. Like,
correct.
I think the example they gave was Division 4 actually got a tier 1, at least in the Champion Europe division or one that they did. But they also are like, actually, the one I'm looking at here, Limited Classic, Division 5 does win a star, but they do not in 4. And again, we also have been told that contenders and challengers could have more divisions, and then who knows? Like,
well,
I
no,
agree that
bring that back up real quick though. But like we'll talk about like the loot boxes, right? You get, if you finish in the top 5%, you get 3 elite boxes, and those elite boxes contain stars to tier 0 super rare or rares, and then tier 3 and tier 4 super rare cards. But like, is every box having a card? I don't think so, right? Like, do you think every box has a card? That's not my. Yeah. So like my interpretation is like these boxes, you're going to get 3 elite boxes, and in those elite boxes, you have a X% chance at a card. That percent probably is like 10% or less. And then from there, you get a bunch of boosts and things. So like in that situation, those loot boxes are not very good. But then like all of a sudden, let's say that because like I think finishing top 12 to 25% is reasonable, right? Like on most weekends, I would have an idea that I'm going to finish in the top 25%. So I can look at it and be like, all right, I'm going to most likely win 1 elite box, and I probably on average will win like a tier 3 or tier 2 rare type of thing. And you can sort of be like, all right, this is sort of like what I think this is going to be worth. Is how much should I invest in this? But also like another thing with like, I have in my gallery right now, I don't know how many cards I have. It's probably in over 1,000, right? All 1,000 of those cards are going to be class of competition cards. So like me buying 1,001 cards just means I have another class of competition card that I have to fight with. Like, so for example, like if I bought right now, I want to buy a Celentano. If I was buying a card right now, I'd buy a Celentano rare today. The issue is I have like 12 other goalies in the MLS. So for me to buy a Celentano rare that is a classic card, all of a sudden I now have 13 classic MLS goalies. I don't really need 13 because I'm only can realistically play 3 to 4 on a weekend. So do I really want a 13th? No, I would much rather wait until it's a new season card and then I have one in season Celentano instead of an older season.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Wanted to clear up something. Philly Dilly said for in season, we also don't know if only Division 1 will get cash, how many places will get cash, etc. It makes the EV calcs basically impossible. The only rewards in the in season comps is cash.
Correct. You get nothing but cash, which is why it makes
everybody who wins wins cash.
Which is why it makes the EV calculations very possible.
Right.
Because you're only getting cash and each lineup is very clear. So we'll go through examples of like what the thought process is behind that and come up with ideas today. Like that's obviously part of what we're doing.
Yes. Carol said, we know roughly a percentage of winning a card in a loot box, about 10% on average, but don't know the values behind the different types of boxes. Yeah.
Correct.
I can't wait till somebody
if I ask you percentage wise, how much percent do you think that we have of like the information we need right now? Like I think we have 20% of the information needed.
I think that's about right.
Yeah. Like we have enough to realize like I think we have a good amount of information for Premier League, which if you've looked at my purchases, because I believe there was someone that called a bunch of people out for not buying a bunch of cards like the day that it launched, when in reality, like there was a shitload going back and it took us a bit of time to figure stuff out. If you look at my purchases, there's a very, very clear area that I'm addressing in my purchases. And well, I guess 2 areas, one of which being like rivals competitions, where I'm buying limiteds. But there's a very clear
That's my favorite. You are buying literally Premier League super rares for the Prem comp, cash comps, and limiteds for rivals.
Correct. That is accurate, Laird. So within this though, like I have a very clear thing, which we're going to use that as the example when we go through it, just so that we're on the same page, Laird. Super Rare is just easier because I played Super Rare competition this week, so I have the numbers like here, and it's just easier with a smaller number set to like use those. So
how many? Sorry, before you keep going, how many new season Super Rares did you think you needed to compete for the rest of this season?
New season Super Rares for me in the Prem?
Yeah.
I thought I needed 1.
Sorry. Not how many did you think you needed to add? Like how many did you think if you were going to compete, how many new season super rares did you need? Because obviously in super rare, you only need 3 new season.
I think you need, you're talking new in-season cards. How many new in-season premiere? I thought I needed 3. But that's because I had a pretty good idea of like, so I'll give
So you were going to just play one lineup.
I was going to play one line. My plan was to play one line. And the only reason I was even doing it was because I had won a Pascal Gross like a while ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, like 6 months ago. And like I would argue that he is the second best midfielder in the Premier League that you could have. And then I bought a Diego Dalot super rare a while ago, and he's pretty serviceable in certain matchups. And then I have a Bruno Fernandes super rare, which is in theory very good in certain matchups. Yeah, so I was like, okay, so I have effectively like those 3 pieces. And then I have a David Raya super rare, which is the best goalie in the Premier League in terms of value right now. Like he's the most expensive. So
hold on. Let's not call him the best anything. He's the most expensive.
Yeah, the most expensive. So like the best in terms of like what people view. So effectively, I knew I had like that 4, and I needed a forward. So I basically looked. I literally will tell you what I did. I looked through the forward list for the Premier League. So let's pull up the forward league list for the Premier League, and we'll go through it.
I think there's one good one.
Yeah, and we both are going to say the same name here, but we'll get when you pull it up here, we'll go through it and we'll discuss it. So we're gonna look at Premier League forwards for this season, and there's a very clear option. So if we sort by, we'll just use L15, right? All right. So Jota's was going to get phased out because if people were returning for Liverpool. I was not interested in buying Mo Salah. That wasn't of interest to me. Son is the one good one.
Yep.
Which I know you're going to say the same thing. And then from there, you just see like a bunch of dudes, right? Like it's just a bunch of dudes that are like okay to like not okay to like, I'm not going to buy 35-year-old Willian. So it's like, there's just dudes. Then I scroll down and I basically get to Man United. And I watched a couple Man United games and I'm like, they are actually looking decently offensively. And I was like, all right, let me check this. So I actually tried to get Højlund first, because I think Højlund's going to be a pretty decent card. Match Slow actually mentions Pedro Neto being a pretty good option. I definitely looked at Neto. He was someone that I was relatively interested in. But I got to I looked at Højlund and I tried to get Højlund and nobody was interested in selling Højlund. Then I looked at Garnacho because I hadn't really looked at Garnacho, and he's actually been really damn good.
Yeah, his AA has been really strong.
And so I was sitting there, and I've also like we said at the beginning of the show, I realized that. So official CK said Bailey and Watkins. I actually tried to get Watkins. I bid on him in terms of new card auctions, and but it was after I bought Garnacho. If I didn't, I would have. But basically, the idea for my lineup was like, I'm going to be playing Dalot, and I'm going to be playing Bruno in this lineup most of the time. So if I'm going to be playing Dalot and I'm going to be playing Bruno in this lineup, Man U guy makes a lot more sense for me than any of these other options, because they're just going to be in a good matchup if they're in a good matchup. So I did this, and then I looked, and they had a good matchup versus Luton. So I'm like, this is a great spot for it. So that's when I bought it. I bought it right before the Luton game, and I almost won. I almost won the Super competition week 1 and paid everything off. But I'm also sitting there talking to myself, and I'm like, all right, 19-year-old forwards that really seem to have like established themselves with more AA than they had previously shown back in the day, that really doesn't have a death move because he's obviously at a high-end club already. So I was like, this makes a lot of sense, because I'm always going to find somewhere to play a 19-year-old Premier League forward, right? Like I'm going to find somewhere, whether it be U23 Super Rare, Premier League Super Rare, Premier League Super Rare Classic. Like there's going to be somewhere where I'm probably going to be able to fit this dude into a lineup. So anyways, I bought him, and then actually just like yesterday, I bought the one guy that I think is like the most underpriced person that should be more expensive than they are. That's James Maddison. But
he just had a huge price drop with the injuries.
Yeah, but so like he's just a really good card when he plays a lot.
Mm-hmm. But when he plays a lot is the problem. I think that's what keeps his price. I mean, he's not cheap, but cheaper.
Yeah. So, anyways,
I do want to shout out Haber for a second, because Haber's been saying Garnacho is like a good usable card for a while, and I'm just like, he's just being a Man United homer, and he's like, no, watch him play. The A will come, and I'm like, I don't watch anybody, so I'm not going to watch Garnacho, but it's come good, so I want to give Haber at least some credit on that one.
Yeah, I mean, you got to give Haber credit sometimes because he says some dumb shit that he gets blasted for. So you got to like offset it when he actually says something intelligent. But I mean, I tend to agree. I mean, you look at the last since Christmas, like he's kind of established himself as like a lock starter with and he's like not subbing, and you are looking at it and like, I mean, he has one game that's real shit AA, two like bad, and then like you have 6 games over 10 with a couple like 20 pluses. That's pretty damn nice.
It's really good, yeah, for a 19-year-old kid in the Prem.
Yeah, 19-year-old kid in the Prem. So I was just like, it made a lot of sense for me at the time. So, anyways, from an expected value perspective, I think someone asked a little bit ago if expected value, Blue Tomatoes asked expected value comes from DFS. Yes, but like it's also just like a term in like in terms of like value and stuff like that, in terms of sort of figuring out the reality of the situation. So, anyways, the best way, the most efficient, simplistic way of figuring out the value of your lineup is looking at how much money is being given out in a competition, figuring out how many lineups are entered in that competition, and dividing. Whatever that number comes to is your expected value for a neutral lineup in that competition in a perfect vacuum. Nothing's going to be perfect, and we'll discuss some of the ways that I think it makes sense. So we're going to go through here real quick, and we're going to talk about the expected value of a lineup in the Premier League Super Rare. This works in rare, works in limited. I did the math for those to sort of come up with the ideas as well. I'm using super rare because it's a much more easy mathematical way to do it, and I have it already. So last week, Laird, this past weekend, this current weekend that's currently going right now, there is 84 lineups in Premier League Super Rare right now. Okay, 84. How much money are they giving away in Premier League Super Rare?
I think at least in the next weekend, it's like 10 grand.
I think it's 10 grand. So anyways, you divide 10 grand and 84. Okay. Again, we're keeping this super basic. There's other ways to do it. There's a lot of factors you need to come in here and figure it out, right? So if you have $10,000 and you divide it by 84, the average lineup is going to be worth $120 for this game week. If you have a better than average lineup, it is worth more than $120. If you have a worse than average lineup, it's worth less than $120. But the basic idea is that it's worth like $120. Then you factor in other things. Like let's say in this competition, 84 lineups, let's say 60 of them are actual lineups. The other 24 are just like dead lineups that are like commonplace. Means you change your math and you divide 10,000 by 60, and that gives you the new breakdown of how much you think your lineups were. So 10,000 divided by 60, and you get $166. So all of a sudden, you can get a pretty good idea that your lineup's somewhere between like $120 and $150. Then, like, let's hypothetically say your lineup is really good, and you're like, this lineup's really good on average. Like, you have a Man City stack. You're like, this lineup's great. It's going to be way better than those people in this competition that are running a Luton Town lineup, which is true. You can just guess sort of like, all right, maybe I have double the equity that someone that is running the Luton Town lineup would have, and I have like a 2x multiplier. So like you can sort of kind of guess that your lineup's going to be worth like $200 to $250 each time. And you can guess that like each time you run it, you will have $200 to $250 in value on that lineup. Some weeks it's going to be like $150. Some weeks it's going to be $300. But just like simplistic stake, let's call it $250. If I have $250 in the lineups each week, and I get to run it, let's say 30 times over the course of the season, because Premier League's 38 weeks, some of them are going to be midweeks.
Yeah.
Let's call it 30 weeks, just for
Yep.
a simplistic way. You multiply the two together, you get 250 times 30, and all of a sudden you think that your lineup gets between like $6,000 to $8,000 in equity over the course of the season. Obviously, at this point in the season, that number is much different because there's only, let's say, 10 weeks left. So you say you have $250 in equity times 10 times, all of a sudden I have $2,500 in equity. So, like, realistically speaking, if you look at that and you look at a season and you're like, okay, I can spend $6,000 to $8,000 for my lineup at day 0 before the season starts and return that amount of equity over the course of the season. Sometimes you're going to win more. Sometimes you're going to win less, because if you win the Premier League competition twice, which is possible, especially at the super level where there's a lot less competition, all of a sudden you return like 7K on those two, and then you generate other stuff. Maybe you return like $15,000 over the course of the years. It's reasonable. So, anyways, so the idea for me is basically, I think a Premier League super rare lineup with the current prize pools are worth $6,000 to $8,000 at a good lineup. Like a good lineup, I think, is worth like $6,000 to $8,000. So without knowing any future value that is going to come from it, from being able to play in classic competitions, from being able to play the cards in future in-season competitions, I'm not even looking at that factoring in at this moment. I just think that I can spend $6,000 to $8,000 on a super rare Premier League lineup that is good and expect to return that over the course of the season. Then from there, everything is obviously a bonus because you're getting more. But basically, like, if you want to get more complicated, you have to try to break down the classic competitions, the loot boxes, all this stuff to try to come up with a proper valuation on stuff. But I'm just trying to come up from like a super conservative, reserved estimation of like that. And so if I think that I'm in between $6,000 and $8,000 over the course of the season, I can spend that on a super lineup and return it. Maybe I want to be a little bit more conservative and I want to do $5,000 to $6,000. I can then probably go and come up with a lineup that costs me $6,000 and be like, I can run this each week, will likely return and pay off that lineup. Then from there, I get additional money. If you think that there's going to be additional utility long term, which is definitely the case between classic competitions and in-season utility, like let's say I'm looking at buying a Rodrigo Super Rare, and the Rodrigo Super Rare is going to cost me $5,000. I can be like, all right, I can return 3,000 of that this year. Am I going to get an extra $2,000 of return on that later? Yeah, probably, because I can run it in season competitions again, and I do not have to buy that card again. I can just use that one I have. And because I only need to have 3 in-season super rares, I can run that over and over again. So anyways, I looked at it from a super rare level, and then I looked at it from like a rare level. I think the rare number was like probably $100 realistically. So you probably have like $3,000 to spend on a rare, but you get less value in the future from your rare cards because you can only use one of them in season competition compared to 2.
Do you, I like this question from Scosmo. Do you look at that as like a straight 5-card lineup in terms of the EV, or do you do like all of your Prem cards and how you look? Like how many numbers are you adding?
Each lineup in theory. So like if you run like a lineup that has a good stuff every week, that's what your expected value is. So if that lineup takes you 7 cards, then all of a sudden you have 7 cards that you have to spend $5,000-$6,000 on instead of 5 cards that you spend $5,000-$6,000 on. This obviously benefits stacking, because if you're stacking, like this past weekend, Tottenham didn't play. So like I couldn't play my James Madison card because they just didn't play. So therefore, if I was relying on him in the lineup, I would have had to have someone else to fill in the lineup for that given weekend. So the nice thing is too, though, is like each of your weeks or each of your lineups effectively has the same EV. Like technically it's like slightly less each lineup that you have.
Right, each one's slightly less.
But like effectively it's the same. So if you have 20 Premier League cards, if you're able to build 3 lineups, you're able to run that over and over again. And the plus side is like that strongest lineup, that number 1 lineup each week, you can prioritize that lineup, and that lineup might, instead of having $250 a week, that lineup might have like $500 in equity on a week. And maybe your worst lineup then, instead of having 250, has like 100. But effectively, like, when you add them together, you still gain equity by being able to maximize your one lineup compared to your other ones.
So one thing to clarify, the EV on your lineup also doesn't change the what you have won doesn't change. So like if you win big last week, just kicked Sean off apparently. I was going to try to clarify to Sean directly, but now I'm the only one here. But what I was going to say, oh, there he is. Hold on.
I accidentally hit the back button on my mouse, and it just
no worries. So what I was going to say, the expected value, like that number, is basically what you're expecting to do in the future, and so what has previously happened shouldn't affect the value of your lineup this week. So if you're thinking my lineup has an EV of $300 each week for the season, just based off of kind of the estimated totals we just had, if you win $5,000 in 1 week, that doesn't change your EV for future weeks.
Correct.
It just helps your actual returns instead of your expected value moving forward.
Correct. So it's like one of those things, like, right, like this weekend coming up, you already showed it. Man United plays Man City. I'm not expecting to. My expected value that week is like $50, right? Like, I'm not. If I run that lineup, I'm probably not even gonna run that lineup. I'm gonna be honest. I'm probably not gonna waste those cards in there, or like I'll run those guys and like I'll run some scraps and call it a day. But that lineup, I'm not expecting to return my $250. I'm expecting my return to be $50. But the week where they play Luton Town, for example, I might expect my value to be like $600. So like it's going to fluctuate, and I'm just giving you the basic breakdown over the course of the whole season. So basically what you can do though is you can do this at each level. You can do this at the limited level and at the rare level. And honestly, the expected value and the math behind it works better because you have less expected value in future seasons of being able to use those cards in the in-season competitions. So you're not going to be able to use them in those competitions as much as you can use a super rare, for example. So like it knocks it down a bit. So Match Slow asks, how would you value a Liverpool lineup against Forest with Kelleher, Virgil, McAllister, Robertson, and Diaz? You basically look at it and be like, all right, I think it's a very favorable matchup. Maybe Man City has a bad matchup, and all of a sudden you're like, all right, this lineup is on average has a $300 valuation, might have $500, $600 at the super level, and you're like, you want those weeks to be the ones that maximize your stuff because those are the weeks you're expecting to actually hit the value.
Right. And so that's sort of where I felt like we had to have this conversation, because it felt like a lot of people were like trying to come up with a very specific single number of this is how much I need to make. And it's an estimate.
Correct.
Over the course of a season. And while we've been using averages, $300 or whatever, there are weeks where, just like you said, there are going to be weeks where you have $50 because like you're of expected value because your lineup's just not that good. But other weeks it might be 500, and we just need to find the middle ground. And that's how you kind of give yourself an idea. And I think, kind of to go back to what we were saying before, this is why it's really important for us to know what the actual numbers are.
Correct.
Because if we don't know what the prize numbers are,
correct,
we have the examples from the roadmap update of Champion Europe, but that's how we can figure out how much it's actually worth spending on these cards to try to win those prizes. Because we don't want to spend 10 grand to win 2 grand.
Correct. Like, you need to figure out and have an expectation or a value. Like, I did the math on rares. I think don't quote me on this because I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think rare was like $100. So like a rare lineup, I think over the course of the season, a neutral rare, you can probably expect it to generate like $3,000 if you start from day one. So like the issue is you start from today. Well, that is not 3,000 anymore. That's like 1,000.
Right.
So if you are spending more than like $1,000 on your lineup right now, then you probably aren't going to get your expectation out. Well, the issue is that like a goalie like David Ray's rare is like $1,200.
Absurd. Yeah.
So like you literally just cannot do it. Now that said, there's other parts that go into it. Like, let's say you have 4 cards that are like all in season that are great, and like a Rodrigo rare gets you over the hump, and all of a sudden like that's what's going to really generate like $200 in value for you the next month per week. Okay, maybe it's worth buying that card, right? But and that's the other thing with the values and the ideas of what people are doing. I think people aren't really thinking it fully as well as they should right now. But like, if you are buying a bunch of rares and limiteds, the card that you want to use as the in-season card in the future is the most expensive card. Like Rodrigo, for example, in the Premier League, is the card you want to use as the out-of-season card in in-season competition, because you do not want to have to go buy a Rodrigo to put in that line. You want to go buy a Gabriel that you then buy as an in-season card, because the price point is a lot different. So anyways, like there's a lot of different things. And then also like we just talked about the in-season. The in-season part is the part that is a lot more easy to justify and figure out what the expectations are. The classic ones right now, we don't have the information at all. But like even then, once you have the information, it's going to be very like, all right, I think I can expect to win on average like a tier 3 rare, and then a tier 3 rare is on average like $40, and all. So like I think each lineup I run is like worth $40 each week. So like then therefore the classic stuff. But like you don't necessarily need to go buy a classic card. You could just like use the one you have. But or if you do need to go buy one, you need to be like, all right, I think I can only realistically justify this on this sort of basis and this sort of price point, and have to make your decisions that way, which again is why like I think anybody that's really going out and buying a bunch of old, I think people that are buying in-season cards right now are crazy, because the pricing does not make sense at the rare and limited level. I think at the super level they're fine, and they're okay at the limited and rare level if you're filling a hole that you need to fill to get a lineup in. It might make sense mathematically, but like just going out and buying a bunch of rare Premier League cards right now, I don't think makes sense that are in season, because like the season ends in 10 game weeks.
The EV seems not as high.
It just doesn't make sense mathematically until right. Like, but maybe we get the classic competitions, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, each classic competition lineup I make is the exact same expected value of the in-season competition, which Cliff notes it's not going to be, but like maybe hypothetically it is. And then you're like, okay, well then buying these cards at this price point aren't bad, because I buy it at this rate for the in season, and then I figure I get like 3 or 4 years worth of classic usage out of it at the same value, and you can sort of come up with the idea of a value of a card going long term on that.
There are a couple comments I wanted to hit up here. Where was that first one? I don't know. But Vita said the price of Araya, Ederson, or Allison can buy you Burnmouth, Crystal, Palace, or Wolves stack and get 230 euros, which I don't think there's any question that finding like those
correct
cheaper teams works.
What I even talked about with Keith, like we talked about, like is spending $500 on a West Ham stack better than $3,000 on a Man City stack? Yeah, you're probably going to have a higher ROI, but you might not make the raw return.
Yeah.
The issue is like
this game has been about since the beginning.
Correct. It's really difficult to like justify fully how much equity your high-end lineups are worth, because it's just like pretty hard to justify that. What I will say is it seems like the high-end lineups are all very similar and very much the high-end. Like you see all these Arsenal stacks, a lot less people are running a Wolf stack. The issue is like you can run a Wolf stack and the Wolves can pop off and you can still lose. Whereas I think, but it can happen with anyone. It can happen with all of them.
Sure. But obviously it's just significantly easier to try to get your money back with a 75th place finish than needing a podium.
Yeah.
Like that's
Muslera has like 20 AA outside of his air too. I would have won so easily. Oh, so tilting.
Philly Dilly says rare. I think it's much easier to make up the EV you need. Super is going to be quite a bit more difficult, although this doesn't factor in you can use 2 classic seasons per super rare. That's sort of the point with super rare, though. It's easier because you don't need as many in season.
I actually think it's I think it's probably the opposite too, like within reason. Like I think you can make a pretty competitive super lineup for like $4,000, $5,000, and it's not really that easy to do at the rare level with the highest guys. Because like the issue is like super rare too, like you get an Allison DNP in the super rare division, that wipes out some of the best lineups, and all of a sudden your EV skyrockets. Whereas like Allison misses in the rare, it's like, all right, whatever. There's still like 3,000 other lineups that I have to compete with. But like you said, like the fact that I can use 2 classic cards in season and super level is huge, because like that second card, like all of a sudden, like that second card you can now use in season as well instead of
Right.
one. Like when you can only use one card, it really tightens up what you can realistically do. Two, allows a lot more freedom within the situation.
So you said there were 84 who entered the Premier League Super Rare one this weekend. Did you see how many entered the Rare?
My guess is like 3,000.
751.
Oh no, limited's 3,000. Limited's like 3,000-ish. Rare was like 700, 800. Yeah.
Yeah, 3823 for the,
Yeah,
for
okay.
the limited one.
I did this like 2-3 weeks ago, so I didn't remember what the rare and limited were, and I don't play them, so I don't see the amount of people in them.
Let's see. Blue Tomato said it's like the situation with you and your Chicago Fire stack back in the day. There, you said in hindsight you would have bought a more expensive stack.
Correct. I would have bought Madron, and I would have bought a different team stack because the rest of the fires weren't good enough. But it's true. Like I was talking to Keith.
That's Casper Shabilko disrespect.
Yeah, he's now in Lugano. I watched your stream Friday for like 10 minutes and saw you were just baffled that he went to the Fire's Swiss League team. He's now there with Aliseda or whatever his name is. I now have two Lugano uniques.
Let's go.
Yep.
What a game.
Yep.
What a game. It's obviously guessing card values, but how do you address EV when it comes to classic competitions?
I think you need the information first, right? Like
how do you even do it now though?
Now it's just hard, like, right? Like now today, it's just not really super easy to come up with valuations and EV on things because it's only playing the podium. So like you're realistic. Like if you do the podium math, like you're getting like $1 a lineup or something. Like it's so small, or like you're getting like $5 to $10. Whereas in this new situation, the in-season cards are very easy to decipher how much value a lineup's worth. Whereas like current situation, it's not. It's very difficult to justify where that is. So I think there's some merit to this being a more mathematical approach, but like people were talking about, like I'm worried about the unique level because I haven't seen the uniques. I've been very apprehensive on like what to do from the uniques at that level. Like if your expected value on your lineup is like $400 and you get to run that 30 times, well, it's difficult to spend more than like 1 ETH on a unique. So I just am definitely interested to see how it plays out in the unique level. The super rare level, I think it's a little bit more simple because like you're going to have a reasonable EV, but it's also going to be easier to like sort of replace stuff, whereas the unique level is difficult to replace stuff. Because someone said a little bit ago, like all of a sudden Rodrigo tears his ACL, and then what do? The answer is like you are going to buy new cards, because if you don't, like your EV is $0. So it's basically like all of your other cards go to zero unless you buy another card. Then you have $300 again every week. So goes into the whole you'll have to spend more money and buy new cards. I also think there's going to be at the higher level, which I know not everyone will care about, but like I think there's going to be a major goalie backlog at Super Rare and Unique. There is just not that many of these guys that you can realistically have to make lineups. Like Premier League. So like hypothetically, right? Like you have classic and in season. I mean, I bought this guy on the weekend and I thought it was a great deal for myself. I was happy with it. But like, I bought a Pickford Super Rare on the weekend. It's only 13 Pickford Super Rares, period. Let's pretend that each person in the Prem has like the same amount. The number's going to change because like some guys come in from covered leagues and boom, they have 40, or like some guy came in uncovered and has 0 and changed. But like
there are probably very, very few Premier League players that have a lot of super rares.
Yeah, goalie wise, yes, yeah.
Like we just haven't had the Prem that long on the platform.
I'm trying to think of how about Flecken. Flecken seems like someone that would have a decent amount. Yeah, so Flecken has 22.
Wow.
But so like anyways, like just I'm gonna use Pickford because like, if I look at Pickford, like he'll probably have more than some of these other guys. So like if you have
Allison has 23, by the way.
Yeah, but Allison makes sense,
the most.
and then like Fabianski and those guys make sense. But anyway, so like pretend each Premier League goalie has like 15 super rares. That means there's only 300 super rare goalies, period. Some of which like you don't know who's going to start necessarily because like you have like the Verbruggen Steele situation. You don't really know who's going to start, or like you have an injury, and then all of a sudden the backup is not minted, and then boom, there goes another. So like, there's just not very many super rare goalies, because there's also like, these guys are also usable in the class, or in the champions,
yeah.
champion Europe stuff too. So like, there's just not very many super rares. Goalies even less. Like goalie, you're gonna have like 40. So like, all these whales are gonna want to be like, I want a lineup, and it's like, hey, there's no goalies. Like, any goalie is gold, I think. So I think there's going to be a backlog in terms of super rare unique goalies, or people are just not going to play those levels, which is also possible.
Yeah, I wonder if we're going to see more, more like whale gobbling of these cards. Like YNWA has 2 Allison super rares, and like, if he gets a couple more, then it's like, obviously that's moving more into the buying cards to make sure that other people can't have lineups as good as yours.
Yeah. I mean, realistically, right? Like, everybody should be buying like a Premier League goalie, or like a Bundesliga goalie, or a La Liga goalie. Like, those guys should be gold. Like, if you have a super rare of those guys, are unique, like a unique, like all the whales. Like, I've talked about this, like you and I talked about, like, you could buy 15 Jude super rares and use every single one of them every week if you're a true whale, right? But like, one thing I noticed out of this,
I can't imagine the EV is positive on that one.
No, I'm not saying it is, but I'm saying like you could. But I think that that I looked at it, and this was even like confusing and concerning to me. Whales really struggle to field unique lineups because there's just not that many goalies that you're consistently like, this guy's going to start.
Yeah,
like,
let's feel really bad.
No, but I'm like, it like super. I'm saying, like, when I originally saw this update and I was thinking of things, I'm like, oh, Bellama's going to have like 6 champ Europe lineups, 6 Premier League lineups, 6 Bundesliga unique lineups. And I was like, all right, if they're going to be able to have that at uniques, they're going to have that in the super level, because why wouldn't you, right? And then I started looking at it, I'm like, man, they're going to be lucky to get like 1 or 2 lineups out in the unique level. Super level, they're not. Like, Bellama, I don't think can run, like, he can't run like 24 lineups in the champ Europe type stuff in super. Like, he's probably gonna have like 1 or 2 lineups in classic and in-season competition, like La Liga, for example. That's not many for someone I would have been like, oh, this guy's gonna have a lot. But even him, he couldn't do it.
I just used the card finder, and maybe I should adjust something. So I basically was looking for how many total Premier League goalie uniques there are, like actual cards, and I basically just did all of them with an L40 of more than 1, because it means that they've actually played. Would you adjust that at all, or because like that obviously includes like this Verbruggen and Steele? But anyway, how many cards do you think there are total cards, Premier League goalies?
But you just did. They had to play 1 game in the last 40.
They have an basically, like they have an L15. Oh, actually, I guess I could do percent start. So at least 4%.
No, do more than that. Do like at least 20% start.
20%.
Or at least 10, because like 10's at least 4 games then.
Okay. And how many cards do you think it is?
Well, I would guess 300 to 400.
73.
Super rares? Oh, unique.
No,
oh, sorry. I thought you were talking super rares. Unique.
Sorry, yeah. Uniques.
My guess would have been 50. So that's more than I thought. But we're gonna go through this, and you're gonna find, guys, that like that means there's 3 Kelleher's. Well,
right. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, there's 3 Kelleher's, three Allisons. Like, those guys are not playing at the same time. So that 73 is really probably like 50.
Right. Yep. I'll just do 612. Yeah. Like, it's not that many.
No, it's pretty many. How many of them are there in the
612 of guys with L40s of at least 20?
But like, so we just talked.
It's actually less than that.
Yeah, there's going to be like 20 Kelleher's, and then there's going to be 20 Allisons. So it's really only 20, not 40. So yeah, like, I just think there's going to be a backlog in lineups. Like, for example, right, using this, let's call it 500, because like you said 6, but like it's going to have those type of situations. So let's call it 500. That means that between classic and in season, there can only possibly be 500 Premier League lineups if every single one of those goalies goes with the Premier League competition. Some people are going to play these guys in Champ Europe. Some people are going to play them in U23. Some people aren't going to be able to field a lineup. So like all of a sudden you're at like, there's a max of like 300 lineups that can be used in-season classic and the super goalie competition. It's going to be a situation I do not have very many super Premier League players. Like this is not something where I have a lot of players. I have 3. So like of those 300, I have 1% of them. And I'm not someone that has a lot of these cards. Like there's other people that are going to have quite a few of these cards. Like search Team Bambi. Can you search just Team Bambi?
Because he has this one right here.
Yeah, like I'm guessing he's going to have like a good amount of Premier League super goalies.
12.
Yes, he has 12. Of those,
well,
12,
actually, hold on, because it's not actually like Kelleher is 1.
Yeah.
Verbruggen
1. Gerbich is 1. Gerbich starts.
He has been, yeah. For
Pope will when he's back. So it's like 8 to 10, right? It's like 8 to 10. So like he has literally 3.
This is somebody with a $3.3 million gallery.
Yeah, but I'm saying like there's going to be people like, let's say there's 4 of him because AJ probably has a lot too. Like AJ has a lot, Bellama has a lot. All of a sudden, like these guys have 10% of the entire allotment of pool at this level, and you just can't really have it. But anyways, if you guys have any questions on it from a like
AJ has 1 by the. This is AJ's only Premier League super.
Well, AJ is going to be new seasoning it, I guess, next season. So like in this scenario, we have if anyone has questions on like limited and rare level, please feel free to ask also.
Do you think it's harder to do it at the limited level just because of the number of lineups? Like, do you think we see just an explosion in the number of limited and rare lineups for the new season?
Well, there really can't be, right? There really shouldn't be an explosion because there's only so many people that can have lineups.
That's
like, here's another misconception that I think people have had that I'm curious what your thoughts are. People are like, I'm going to buy an in-season card and run it in Classic. What's your thoughts on that?
That sounds like buying super rares to play in the rare division.
Yeah, like it's just something you're just realistically not going to do. I'm
like,
not saying
no reason to do it.
Correct. Like if you have a rare that you are constantly playing in the classic competitions, you should just not have that rare, right? Or you should have a classic version of that rare.
So like we're going to see it. Like people are going to play in-season cards in classic competitions because they're going to, let's say that's the one they have and they're just going to build their way up. So it's not like we won't see any of them, but buying one to play it in classic is like
correct.
Don't do it. Like so you don't get any benefit. There's no extra. You don't get any extra points. Like there's just no reason. There's just no reason to do it.
Yeah. So your question though of like limited versus
Vita's got it right here. Because I was going to say like you get the 5% bonus, but you're buying a card with 5% bonus to play against cards with 8% XP and 3% collection.
Yeah, it's just like not going to get the job done. So Charlie said, I think next season in-season cards will be minimum 1.3 the classic price. I did notice this season. It seemed like that was already the case, which I think was too much. Again, though, it goes back to our like, we need to know what the classic competitions are before we realistically, I think, have an idea. But also in theory, like some of the elite level cards shouldn't be that much of a gap. Like Rodri shouldn't be like Rodri rare shouldn't be like $1,000 for a rare and then like $1,500 for an in-season rare. Because like in theory, you just want to be playing a Rodri rare as your classic card in that competition anyways. Or whoever the most expensive guy is. Investor Durr said, what do you think would be the best strategy to play the limited next season? So the best strategy and the way I would best explain it would be I would come up with we're expecting everything to be available day one for limiteds. Like we're expecting you to be able to like buy limiteds now and be able to make a decision that way. So the best way I would be able to do limiteds is figure out the exact amount of cash that's given out in the limited competition for in season. Then I would do the math that I talked about earlier in this episode and then sort of see like, all right, how much is it going to cost me to buy this stack or like these players within this and sort of figure out what makes the most logical sense to you from a building standpoint. Vita says he thinks it's going to be 1.75 to 2.25 in August for a tier 0. I don't think it's going to be that much, but it might be. Like
I
it
could
could be
definitely be
some like
double.
people are paying like 1.3, 1.4 now, and it makes no sense. But the issue
Right.
is like the truthful answer might be it doesn't make sense. It does not make sense to play, which
So
people aren't going to like.
I think, well, it's going to be one of those things that um, the early prices are going to be so absurd that the people who do not buy them immediately will realize that there's no way you can make that money back.
Correct.
And then, so they don't buy. And then the people who bought them at really high prices before they realize you can't make it back are going to get really pissed when the prices drop because everybody's like, I'm not paying that because I can't make the money back.
Correct.
And each game week that goes, your EV goes down because you have fewer weeks that you can use it.
Correct.
And yeah, but Vita, I agree with this. People are going to be irrationally worried that they missed the train.
Correct. And also, like, something that you guys can take into consideration too when you're figuring out the EV and you're spec'ing out. If I can sell the card for half that I paid for it a year from now, you can factor that into your valuation too, right? Like if it costs you $3,000, but you can get $1,500 back in a year, and you can generate $4,000, well, then that might make sense to do it because you can just recoup it anyways.
So somebody asked that actually before. I apologize. It was so much earlier, but they were basically like, does your EV, and it's not really an EV calculation, but when you are figuring out whether it's worth buying these cards, are you thinking of using the entire season, let's say the Premier League, that you get your 38 game weeks and you win back what you won? Or is it you win back enough and then plus the value of your cards is more than what you paid for?
It can, the expected value of the lineup is like what it's going to be each week. Like that part isn't factored in. But if you can get back half and you made double or something, like it's going to make sense for you to do a lot of things. But so yeah, I think that a lot of people, I like I said, I've done the math and I know a reasonable breakdown of like what I think makes logical sense for the rare and the limited division. Right now, it makes no sense to be buying those cards to me with what I did from a math perspective on those. But the super rares, I think there was a bit more merit for me. But I actually like this was a weird situation. Like I was in a, for me to buy super rares, I had to buy one to make like what I thought was a pretty good lineup. Rares, I would have had to buy three because I literally just have no Premier League rares. So like in season, so it's just like I'm further ahead in the super rare situation than I am in the rare situation.
Do you think you'll buy the rares for next season?
To be determined.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Official CK said people who buy in early will have less competition in season comps next season at the start. In theory, yes, but if all the cards are available day zero before the season starts to people on the buy now, then it's questionable because we don't know what's going to happen.
We also have no idea if the early season the early season, competition rewards are the same that they will be in December or January. Like from a user perspective, it seems like they have more of a reason to backload rewards instead of front load. Obviously, front load means people are going to FOMO and buy all the cards, for absurd prices early. But if you want those card prices to sustain, you need people to want to keep buying throughout the season. And yeah, Philly Dilly said DraftKings Rainmakers rewards were heavier as the season goes on.
Yeah,
it's just that more people are buying cards, and if more people buy cards, then there's more revenue to pay out to those users.
And to be fair, we don't know if that could be the case next year, right?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah,
we don't know how they're going to do it.
That's part of the 80%. We don't know.
That's part of the 80%. We don't know. We don't know how to do it. So, and then another thing I think part of the discussion today is like, what's the plans for next season for me? I have an idea of sort of what I want to do in each situation. I would like to try to get an in-season lineup out in every competition that I realistically play. So I'm going to be playing unique level at challenger and contender level. People keep asking me like, why did you sell your Champions League, your Champ Europe uniques? I have like Lucas Holler and Emerson, and those are like my guys. Like I'm not going to return shit off of those guys. And like we talked about, like Pranksy could just buy all the in-season Premier League cards next year, and he could just take like all the money and just like nobody's playing because Pranksy's just like gobbling everything, right? So like that's why I got out of those cards. Like Scosma bought them, and Scosma has other pieces that are better that he can use those guys with that can maybe produce some value. So I want to have like an in-season lineup in both unique levels, and then a couple classics, and then at the other levels, I want to have 3 classics in every competition, except for the Champion Europe type stuff, because I do not have all the Champion Europe type cards to classic comp it. So the idea for me there would be, right, build up the classic comp stuff as the years goes on, or as the years go on, because like I don't want to just buy like 50 cards next year for the Premier League. Then all of a sudden I have 50 cards for classic the year after. I just don't really need that. So like I'll probably try there to keep things a little bit more concise at the start, and then use those cards to like age out into the classic competitions going forward.
Do you think you will ever buy a card for classic again? Like, would you ever buy an old season card again?
Possibly, but it would be like, I think the only old season cards I would buy would be super rares
for the in season.
For the in season competition.
Yeah. So I guess my question, I guess the first question was actually really what I was curious about.
I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no, but the answer is maybe. But again, it comes back to we need to know the information before I give it. So Philly asks, Sean, you said 1 lineup in each comp. Wouldn't it be better to have the max 3 lineups in 1 to 3 comps versus 1 lineup in a bunch? So the idea for me is like I have a bunch of uniques in the class or in the contender and challenger divisions. I want to be able to utilize my best guys in season, and to do that, like I have good guys in both. Uniques are difficult to move around. Like it's difficult to like I have a Matt's Weaver unique. Like nobody has come to buy that card for me at a reasonable price. But so like I can't really move that into contender and get like contender cards. And then I have like a Piazza.
What card was that?
Matt's Weaver. Like one of the best cards you can possibly have right now. But like I can't just move him to contender. I have to use him in challenger. And so my idea is like I have a lot of cards in the different areas in the class competitions, Philly. So for me, it makes more sense to at least always have 1 classic lineup so that I can use it. Other people, it may not make sense to do that. It may make sense to focus within 1 region, but I've been past that, right? Like I'm at a level where I'm ahead of that. And now I'm having 3 classics in each, and then I want to have 1 in season in each. Now, maybe I won't do 3 in seasons in Premier League because I just don't have that many Premier League cards. What I'll do is I will focus on 3 in seasons in contender, where it's like I have Carlos Gil, Lucho Acosta, Hans Vonneken, whereas like I need to have more in-season lineups to be utilizing them best in season. Or maybe the classic competition is good enough. I'm okay playing the classic competitions with these.
What do you think about this from Investor Durr? Choose one, become super good in single league comps, or get okay lineups in every single comp.
Probably you want to. To me, it's always about spreading variance, right? Like if you can have a bunch of different good, if the lineups are dog shit, I don't want dog shit lineups. But like if I can have like 6 good lineups in 6 different competitions, or 1 really good lineup in 1, I'd probably rather have the 6 typically. But we need to have some of the others. Dream of Oblivion asks a very good question. Will it be worth it to just play classic competitions? I don't think so. What's your opinion? Because I'm not sure where you're at on that.
I think if you're so I really want to say yes, but I don't know if it'll actually be true or not.
Yeah, I don't know, but my guess is that the answer is no.
Like I think it will just take longer to like make your money back basically. And the interesting thing is that your success from like an ROI perspective in classic is completely reliant on the new season competitions. Yeah. Because if the new season competitions are great, then people are paying a lot for new season cards, and that's what you win. But if the new season stuff is just like, okay, then people aren't going to be like overpaying for those cards. And then it makes the rewards that you win in classic not as great.
Yeah. Like let's rephrase it, right? Let's rephrase the answer to this question, I think, is a correct answer. There is no way that you do not want to be in the in-season competitions, because either the in-season competitions are really good, those prizes are great, and you want to be there, or they all suck and you're just screwed anyways. Because like they're terrible, the in-season competitions are terrible. People aren't going to want in-season cards or care that much about them. Meaning the cards you're winning in the classic competitions just aren't going to be very good. And I don't think something. So like you've said this, and I disagree with this. People are like, you can still win cash for podiums in Division 1 of classic competitions. I think it's going to be damn hard to get a podium in a classic competition at the rare level.
Oh, sure.
It's going to be like damn hard. Like I think
what about what I said is like disagreeable with?
You said that like it's the same as like what it was, which it just isn't, because it's just like not the exact same. Because more stuff is like plowed into that one area.
I just meant it that the way that it works is that the cash that's paid out now is going to be the same as what it's going to be. It's just obviously going to be harder because there are more lineups.
Yeah. Blue Tomatoes asked, do you think classic comps will get easier after August? I think you're never going to realistically win them. Because like, here's the thing. All right, here's the thing.
Most people right now.
What?
That's the case now.
Yeah, but like
it's just going to get harder.
Here's the thing. It's going to get harder. Yeah, every day it just gets harder because there's going to be new cards that go into that competition. So like there are 312 rare Carlos Gil cards. All 312 are going to be in the classic competitions, except for like a few. And so like you're facing like 280 rare Carlos Gil's a weekend. Or like Hans Vonnegut, like he's probably a better example because he has a shit.
You're not really facing that many though. Like you're not facing because of the division structure. You're not facing
all. Yes and no.
It's no. It's no.
Yeah, I guess because people are just going to get Yeah, that was also a thing. Like people are talking about like, oh, you're going to be able to win better at the lower levels in Division 2 because you're playing people with worse cards. No, you're playing me who just happened to get relegated with a lineup because I ate a DNP. Right?
Yeah,
you're playing against you're still playing against high-end cards, just less of them.
Yeah, Carlos Gil I actually don't think is the great example because I feel like he's one of those ones that you would use a classic card with.
Maybe
when you're in season.
Maybe.
But still, there's still going to be super elite cards that you have to compete against, regardless of the division you're in. Realistically.
Yeah. So Sorare basically asks questions. What's your thoughts on smurfing to stay top of Division 2 rather than fighting out in Division 1? If they don't make it so that you want to be in Division 1, then they did something wrong.
Right.
Like that's where it's gonna come down to that question. Like that's hopefully the answer.
This is what I was saying with
Philly. Yeah,
Carlos Gil is going to be more expensive than a gold. But there are plenty of cards that are 80% of Carlos Gil that are really, really good, and you're going to have to beat them. Like
correct. Vonnegut was probably a better example, right? Like he's a lot cheaper than other people. So he was probably a better example. Vonnegut.
Yes.
Like he's a better example because like he has 374 cards. You're going to probably be playing 350 of those in the classic competitions every week. So like whenever someone goes off, it's going to be very difficult to succeed without having that person to some extent.
Yeah. I mean, for those types of cards, like I think more people like the percentage of total cards that are Hans Vonnegut cards just decreases as you go down the divisions.
Correct.
But that doesn't mean that he's unplayed in Division 5. Like,
correct.
They will still be there.
Yeah. Well, and also like, so this is what like other people are getting to with it. It's like, there's nowhere else to play them anymore though.
Right.
They are in Challenger, whether it be in season or classic, they are there. Like currently today, if I have a Hans Vonnegut rare, which I do, I can play him in 3 different cap modes: Challenger Rare Plus, All-Star Rare Plus. I can play him in 7 spots. In this new situation, I can only play him in realistically 1, maybe 1.5, where like some people will play him in season and like there'll be a weekly special where you can
when he plays Yupin. Like
but like he's gonna be in this one competition and there is nowhere else for him to be. So like you're going to have a very clear, like, okay, Hans Vonnegut had 100 this weekend. I don't have him in my Challenger lineups. It's not a good spot for your Challenger lineups then, because there's going to be a shitload of Hans Vonnegut's that you're playing against to have 100.
Most likely. most likely.
So Rare Andre asked, did you guys play the Rivals yesterday for Zidane's raffle ticket? I did, and I did get it. I do think people had difficulty getting it. But if you had Cruz, if they did not keep a clean sheet, it would have been very difficult to attain. But because they kept a clean sheet, I think if you had a Cruz and you had not just commons, you probably were. A lot of people probably hit it.
I didn't play.
There was a shot. Actually, Larry,
I played 2 arena matches yesterday and won them both. I need to get my 3rd here so I can get.
Lucky.
I actually got some zap points for beating somebody by 100, or I forget.
I got.
I mean, not zap points. I got 3 tickets.
I will say I actually quite like a lot of their challenges, because a lot of the challenges are like, do things suboptimally and try to get the challenge. There's some ways around it, which, like, I had win arena match by less than 20 points. I was waiting this game, and if it was close enough, I was going to sub out my goalie, Muslera, to take a 0 to just win that. But Tuggy was bitching about it on the weekend because he got to get 10 rep points for getting 60 points from a sub. I'm like, that's fantastic, because it's like incentivizing you to use the sub mechanic and try to, like, come back in a game or use it. I actually hit it. I hit it yesterday with Minte from Feyenoord because I was behind, so I brought him in. But, like, I think some of the stuff's pretty fun. The mechanics with the Rivals stuff.
Rivals is fun. How about that?
Yeah.
How about that?
Are they gonna next year? Like, does this surprise you? Does this surprise you? There's only 374 Monicans.
I mean, theoretically, there should be, like, is it 500, 600?
I mean, yeah, they have at least 2 in 2018, right? So, like, yeah, you have at least, there's 6 years worth of Monicans. So, like, in theory, it could be up to 600, but there's only like 350.
Right.
Because he feels like the guy that there's more of than any other card on the platform, right? Like, he just feels like one of those guys.
Yeah, I can't even think of who. It's got to be someone from Belgium, like that season, right?
It has to be someone from that season of Belgium, I think.
Yeah, like how many did he have?
374.
Yeah, I think. Let me see if this is right.
Andy Black has asked what player has the most rares.
Yeah, Mignolet has 377.
Yeah, like Andy, do you actually know the answer?
I don't know the answer.
No, I'm asking if Black knows the answer.
Oh, I don't think he does.
Yeah, because I'm actually curious. Like, it's got to be like one of these guys.
Vita's here. He would know that in 10 minutes.
Yeah, Vita, let us know who it is, because it's also got to be someone that probably hasn't been, like, injured, right? Like, Yari was there in that year, but, like, Yari's had injuries, so, like, they probably stopped minting him at times.
Yeah, I looked up Vandevort. He's got over 300 too, but he's not at 377.
Yeah, because, like,
Mekele's at 3 something.
That makes sense. Like, Mignolet makes sense because, like, he started forever.
Oh, there you go. Andy said Bodard has 407.
That makes sense.
Jesus.
That makes sense.
I bet that's the highest.
That feels like it probably is the highest.
Vita, who has the most rare cards? Like, what player has had the most rare cards minted on the platform?
Yeah,
what rare? Bodard at 407.
Yeah, because, like, looking at Bodard's never missed more than, like, 5 consecutive games, so I don't think he would ever came out of the pools. So, like, that definitely would make sense.
Yeah. Also, how dare you to stop listening? My gosh.
Yeah, I can't believe you would just stop listening. What's up with that?
After an hour and 18 minutes.
But no, I think people need to be. You need to have an idea of what you're getting into with limiteds, rares, supers, all. Like, you need to have an idea of what you're comfortable spending and what you can realistically hope to return.
So I meant to say this earlier and I forgot it, but you just reminded me. When you are looking at both the expected value of your own lineups or your collection of cards to go into a season, do not go into it thinking, as long as I podium 4 times, I'll be good. Because at the limited and rare level, it's highly unlikely that you'll do it twice. It's highly unlikely you'll do it once. And if you do it once, then the odds of you doing it again is just low.
Correct. Well, so here's the thing too, right? Like, the super rare level, things are going to be way lower variance because, like, you're just up against less competition. So, like, if you have a good week, you're realistically going to be in the top 5. Whereas, like, if you have a good week in limited, you, like, might be in the top, like, 400. So like limited is going to be way higher variable, and same with rare. Like if you win rare, like you're not likely to win rare. Like you and I were talking about the other day. I think at the limited level, a decent to good lineup probably could expect to win Premier League in season limited like once every 2 to 3 seasons. I think that's like a realistic hope.
I actually thought it was longer than that.
It could be. I think you talked me into being lower. I originally said it was like 5 to 10 years, and then so maybe 3. So like you can expect to maybe win with like a very good lineup in Premier League in season limited, like every 3 to 5 years. You're not going to hit it every weekend. Like if you think you're going to hit it every weekend, you're just not going to.
So the thing about limiteds, and it literally has nothing. I mean, it does have a lot to do with price, but it's more the number of people who. And here's our trivia answer: Jean Boutez, by the way,
makes sense too.
417. Anyway, so the easiest way to think about this is there are a lot of times where some people will show like who is the highest scoring player at each position. So it's like, if you had this lineup, this is the highest scoring position or lineup you could ever have. The odds that somebody has that lineup in limited is significantly higher than somebody having it in rare, super rare, and unique. So in order to win limited, you almost have to be perfect.
Yeah.
And the odds that somebody has that perfect lineup is just so much higher because there's so many more cards available.
Yeah.
Andy Bodart was second, so well done on that guess. But yeah, Boutez 417. That's a lot of cards. Anyway.
Yeah, it's just like I people just have unrealistic expectations with stuff. I think like if you win Premier League Limited, that doesn't mean you're going to win it again the next week. It means like you hit your 1 out of 150 early in your 150 runs, right? Like long term, that's what it means. Because like you said earlier, like it doesn't change your equity and your expected value going forward, and it changes your expected value 0. It just what happened. You ran above expectation, and that's like another term used, like running above expectation. It's a poker term and stuff. Is like, okay, I was supposed to get $150, I got 300. I ran above expectation. Or I was supposed to win $150, I won 50. I ran below expectation. Yeah. So like that's a good way to look at things. So like if you're playing, I think rare, you realistically could probably win once a year. I think you can win rare once a season with 3 lineups. That was with 3 lineups, by the way, guys. We were talking about limiteds.
Right. It's like basically 90 entries.
Yeah. If you play 3 good limited lineups, I think you can win once out of 3 to 5 years. Rares, if you run 3 lineups, I think you can win once every year. Super rares, I think if you run 3 super rare in season lineups, you can probably win once a month, give or take, once every 2 months. But again, we're talking good lineups, and
I was gonna say really good. Yeah, exactly.
Like,
last question, Sean, before we get out of here. Sorry, Andre said, do you think there'll be a large number of managers who quit after the changes in August?
I mean, there's always people just quit and then they don't quit, and then new people come in. So I think it's hard to like. I think it's hard to fully quantify it. Like some people leave, some people come. I don't know.
I don't know why anybody would quit in August instead of now. Well, like, why would you wait until August?
Because they think their cards will be worth more in August. I don't know. The answer is, I guess I don't know. Like, here's the thing too. Some people really like the updates. Some people really don't like the updates. Some people are like, I'm gonna wait and see because some stuff makes sense, some stuff doesn't make sense. I'm definitely in that department. I think that some things made a lot of sense. I think getting rid of the thresholds made a lot of sense. I kind of wish they just ripped the Mandate off though, because like this current transitional phase is weird. But like I also like I have one major issue with where things are right now. Today, there's 0 value for 90% of the cards on the platform. And I don't think that works for the platform. Like you just can't have that. I have what I think makes a lot of sense, Laird. I think 80% of the value should go to 20% of the cards, meaning 80% of the rewards and the value go to the top 20% of cards on the platform. And the other 80% of the cards get 20% of the value on the platform. So basically, it's like if you have good cards, they're going to get you a lot more, but your shitty cards will still generate you some value. Is kind of how I believe it should be. I think it should be like an 80-20, 20-80 type split. So I don't think they're doing that correctly now. And part of the issue is they haven't explained to us how these special weeklies are going to work. They haven't explained to us how midweeks are going to work. Like, we don't know any of this stuff yet. So we need to know that stuff. Philly Dilly asks, so Sean, come August, will classic comps be basically an afterthought for you? I can't imagine how they won't be, but I'm going to have really good lineups because I have really good cards. So like by default, I'm going to have really good lineups in a lot of these competitions. I think
you not prioritizing them doesn't mean you're throwing in shitty lineups.
Correct. Me not prioritizing means I still have a better lineup than almost everybody. It's just I'm not going to prioritize it. My guess, this is sort of what my guess is, and I think that it makes sense. Based on our discussion earlier, I think that the cost of in-season cards is going to mirror the how much you can make from in-season competitions. So to me, logically, 50% of the value is going to go to in-season competitions. 50% of the value is going to go to classic competitions. Whatever that number ends up being, because I have no idea what it'll be. Because they've said that they are going to go upwards if they sell more, maybe. And so like there's possibilities that it's a lot. But like I think if there's $100,000 in value, half is going to be in season, half is going to be classic. The issue is that in season there is only 100 rare cards of a player. Classic competition there is 400 cards of some players. So like in the in-season competition, you basically are getting 50% of the value with 20% of the cards. Whereas the classic competition, you're getting 50% of the value, but 80% of the cards. So your competition is way more fierce. So if that ends up being the case, and I think that's the case, and I think my lineup is worth, let's say, $100 in season, and I think that I get 20% of that from the class competitions, and I'm going to think my class competition lineup's worth like $20. So that's kind of how I envision the classic competition being versus the in season. Is that sort of what your guess would be?
I think it's reasonable.
Yeah.
But I'm done guessing what Sorare is going to do. That's
Bluesman has asked, if you don't prioritize classic because of whatever reason, will you sell your classic cards in order to fund in season? Yeah, definitely. I definitely have way too many cards in this format for classic competitions. So there's definitely a situation where I go and sell classic competition or classic cards for in season competition. Like definitely it's something I definitely am going to consider.
As soon as we know the rewards, we'll be able to make some more informed decisions. Simple as that. All right. Thank you to everyone for joining. We've got a lot of people still here and not enough people who've liked the video. So if you could please do that, it would be greatly appreciated. If for some reason you have not subscribed to the channel, please do that as well. So yeah, thank you to everybody. I'll be back tomorrow. I think we're doing an early one, me and Gator Guy. And then, yeah, it should be 3 p.m. GMT, I believe, 10 a.m. Eastern. And yeah, we'll be back. And that's it. If anybody has any follow-up questions on this topic, you can leave a comment in the video below or just hit me or Sean up on Twitter. At Andrew M. Laird is mine. He is at PSU Fans too. Makes it easy enough. So thank you to everybody, and we'll see you around.